Rockwell Apartment, 3rd Street, Cheston. Reported structure fire. Traffic 10, engines 41, 111 have been alerted, 1038.
Rockwell Apartment, ready to ball. Hold on, that's it. Okay.
The majority of the men in our fire department are coal miners. It's a pet peeve of mine and of the majority of the coal miners, whether they're continuous miner operators, shuttle car operators, roof bolters, that every time you turn on a television or radio and see or hear an interview with a coal miner, he's always in a bar or in a courthouse step, some sort of demonstration. And that just doesn't depict the image of the coal miner as he actually is. He's not that type of guy.
Well, we've always had the reputation of being a dumb coal miner. Every time I hear it, it kind of rubs my fur.
No miner likes to be put down. He's proud of who he is and what he is. These people, in my opinion, don't know what they're talking about. They haven't met the new coal miner today.
This is a good view of a coal miner. This is what coal miners do. They're interested in community action. They go to churches. They belong to civic groups, civic organizations. Of course, I realize that doesn't make such a good news story.
A miner today is very similar to just any other individual. A miner today wants what everyone else wants. We want new homes. We want new cars. We want education for our children. We want what all other Americans want. We simply want what might be the American dream of everyone.
Morning back home now, home we go, we sang. Four ladies chained across that ring, turn on around with a pretty little thing.
We just want a place in America, same as anybody else. We're no different than any other group of people.
Let's see them skirts swirl, roll away half sashay.
What gets me is people goes away from these mountains, but they always want to wind up right back here. So evidently it's not so good away from here.
The ring, circle to the left.
I don't know why they think coal miners don't have nice homes. I guess they think they're dirty from the time they go into the mines until they die. I don't know, but we've worked for what we have. I just think it's time that coal miners were seen in the light that they should be seen, as human beings, as people who go to work, who have families, who have interests. This is our roots. This is home. Cities aren't for us.
We pray that you bless each and every one of us. And Father, we pray that you bless this food that we're about to eat. Amen. Patty's been cooking this since early this morning, so let's eat it. Everybody eat up. I've come from a long line of coal miners, from all the way back to my great-grandfathers, both of them. And I didn't think I would go in the coal mine. And I've heard all my life about how hard it was for a man to make a living. It really stuck to me to know that somebody spent that much time of their life feeding a family.
And my dad said, since how we were a coal mining family, that's what we were emphasized, coal mining. So I went into the coal industry and ended up working where my father worked.
In Depression days, a miner sometimes just went in the mines with just water in his bucket, because I remember lots of times my dad didn't have anything in the bucket. And when you come home, you wouldn't have a meal like this. It was really rough.
patty? Are these the potatoes you grew in the garden?
Yeah, the corn is too.
My father told us how to get bread on the table and to be the right kind of man so that he wouldn't have these problems. So I've heard it all my life, to go into coal fields and make the best of it I could. That there was a great life if a man was a man and could handle the work and stand the hours to make the money to feed his family. When my father was in the coal mines, he was well respected, he was a hard worker, he was a go-getter, and then that's exactly what I did. I fell right into his footsteps.
Mary and Jackie Joe has really been an experience through his family. They're all really close, and I enjoy having them here. And when we get together, it's a get-together, no doubt about it. We really enjoy ourselves. We have a real strong bond. There's nothing that we couldn't talk to each other about. I can't say that I enjoy thinking about the risks and the dangers that are involved. I was a little bit nervous when we were first married. You know, when you're first married, you don't want anything to mess that up. My husband has a lot of common sense, and I trust him. And he brings home stories telling me about the safety that they have now and the ways that they do safeguard something happening and stuff. So it's something you have to adjust to. I've adjusted to it.
Come on, Krista. Come on, sweetheart. Take your bottle. Today's miner is a completely different type of man from what it was 25, 30 years ago, from what I've got from my background, my relatives, my grandfathers, my father. Back in the old days, a man, all he had was his work. Today, a miner has his education, his family, and everything else that goes along with being a man. I think it's a great life and a great tradition for myself to be in the coal fields and to know that my family had spent their life in the coal field and I'm going to spend mine there too. All right, I'll have to have 3 of you guys riding in the Jeeps down there. The rest of you guys get in here. First thing, when you go in a mine, you make sure you have all your men with you, count your men, you ride a man trip, and you head for the working section. Traveling in a coal mine is just like traveling on interstate or on one of these big 4-leaf clovers. You have to know which switch to take to get to where. Some mines, like our mine is well lit up. When you pass a certain switch, it tells you where you're at. And it's just like looking to a highway. You know exactly what road you're going to take and everything else. It's just like getting out in your car and going to town. 8 men on a section, 2 miner men, 2 buggy men, 2 boulder men, and 2 utility men. And we mine the coal. We've got a couple new men up here. We want to keep our eyes on these ribs up here. We had a lot of fluffing in the other 2 headings. We want to make sure we watch those. Same with the roof. And I want to read you a couple rules here on this roof and rib control plan. There are roof and rib plans made up by the company, by the state laws, federal laws. You have to read these to the men, make sure men understand your roof control plan, and every man has a responsibility that is different from another man's. Going on the miner. Brad, fireboss, the right side of the section. You got an operator on a miner. His job is different from the shuttle car operator. So each man has a different safety precaution that he has to watch himself, and nobody else can watch it for him. Everything all right? Help the guys on the miner, get the miner set up. On the miner right here, finish that scratch gun. Hey, Goldie, when you get it set up, we'll move it out of there, okay? I'll get these guys here to give you a hand on that. I went into the coal industry and ended up working where my father worked and found out how well he was thought of. And as myself, when I went in, I had a competition right there because I had to be as good as my father did or I was nobody. And I ended up doing as good as my father, and I hope continue to do as good as my father did. Because there's always somebody around that said that your dad would do a better job than that, and I had to come forward and do as good as he did. Years ago, my father, when he worked, when he mined coal, he used a cutting machine, and they cut and shot on solid. The continuous miner wasn't in operation when he was working. He's not seen this. It's all new equipment with hydraulics, electricity. All a man has to do is sit in the seat and push buttons and pull levers.
He still doesn't understand. When I talk to him about mining coal with continuous miner, he can't believe that coal is loaded as fast as it is, as much as it is. On a running section, 20 years ago, it took 25 to 30 men. Today on a section, it takes 6 or 7 men to run a section. So right there you can see it was a lot slower and a lot harder work. And now, today, all you have to do is run in a place and clean it up in a half hour, 45 minutes, and go to another place, and the bolt machine comes in and bolts.
This has all been mined out right here. We're moving the section this way. See, this is solid coal right here. These are blocks of coal. Back in the old days, you had men that mined the coal themselves with pick and shovel. And this, I think, is what everybody in the country still believes, that it's still being done by pick and shovel. Today, everything is done by modern machinery. Everything is done by levers and hydraulics, and a man's not really breaking his back and killing himself in the coal mines. And I believe that's exactly why 3/4 of the young men in the coal field countries want to go into the coal mines. In this region, that's all you hear about is coal mining. And I think if a man, he's been in a coal mine, his dad's been in a coal mine, his grandfather was in a coal mine, his son has initiative to go in a coal mine. It's just something that's, it's just a way of life. Of course, I could have been somebody that I'm not. I could have been a lawyer, doctor, whatever. But I wanted to be a coal miner.
And it tickled me to death when he made foreman. When Jackie Joe became a foreman, I always did tell him he was going to follow in my footsteps. I didn't quite make it. I had a stroke the day before they was going to put me on salary.
You gonna come back with us next time we go?
Right up here.
What's the matter?
The sun will have to be out.
Well, you are getting cold, aren't you? My father and I are closer right now than we were before he had his stroke. You go through a stage where you don't need your parents. You think you don't need them, you can do without them. And about that time is when my father had his illness. Is that Paul okay? And now I see how important my father is to me and how important he could have been to me back then if I'd have paid attention to him and listened to him and treated him as a father instead of like somebody that can't get along. So now we take him with us fishing, we take him with us hunting, we take him anywhere that any other man would go, and we have a real close relationship. There was always a closeness in the family where there wasn't so much as telling each other you loved each other. There was a way of going about helping one another. But now that I look at my father and our ages and everything, then I wish I had told him more that I loved him. The very first rainbow ever to be seen. And as far as having what we've got is from the coal fields. I've got this from being a coal miner. You say there's poverty in the coal field, but there's not. The people make the poverty themselves. If a man takes care of what he's got, he doesn't have any poverty. It's just a matter of being able to take care of what you do make. I couldn't have it no other way. Okay. You ready for bed now?
I think the classification that TV shows and movies have given the coal miners' wives is rather depressing. The wives of miners are individuals. They have their own interests. Some have their own jobs, their own careers and activities. And I think it's very unfair to put across this rugged idea of what a miner's wife is.
So the people Sunday in the back can hear you.
I feel my job is here with the family, and I feel that I am special for my husband, and I want to be here when he needs me. I'm a helpmate for him. I'm very proud of him. He's worked hard, and I'm sure when his children get old enough to understand his job, I'm sure then that they'll still be proud to say, I'm proud of my daddy, the coal miner.
There is a great future in the coal industry because, let's face it, that's what our energy is all about.
Because as we know today, the coal mines is what's making the world move right now.
Mining has a lot more skills to it than people realize, because it's not everybody can just walk in there and get on a piece of equipment and run it.
Majority of the men today in the coal mines have got a high school education. Some of them got some college.
Everybody can't be president. You've got to have laborers to have industry, and that's my chosen profession.
It's just a fascinating industry. You have to go into the coal mines to realize how different it is from anything else.
Sure, it's dirty, but it's getting more modern every day and every day.
And it just seemed like that's all I ever wanted to do. I went to the service, come home from the service, and begged like hell to get in the mine. I liked it. I'd never leave it.
Our unit, what I work on, I consider it a family.
I would say the average coal miner horseplays around. It's just a common thing among a bunch of men, you know. If you work together daily, and if you just went to work and just done your job and went home, it'd get awful boring.
Well, I think for the most part, a majority of the miners, they seem to go at things with a feeling of ease. Perhaps due to the danger factor, it may be sort of an expression of, you know, why rush, why not stop, you know, to smell the roses or something.
Well, I think everybody calls everybody hey buddy in the mine because they know that that's what they really mean. They mean that a buddy is looking out for them. I first went in the mine and I thought, where in the hell am I? It's dark, there's no windows, I was very scared. Then you start working with different people in the mine and you find out that mining's pretty safe. It's as safe as you make it, and everybody else looks out for one another. So everybody knows that when they go in there, if they skimp on safety and don't do their job, not only does it affect them, but it affects their brothers that are in the mine with them and their sisters. So everybody sort of watches out for the other guy.
I've been on the mine rescue team for 3 or 4 years now. The reason I joined it was because I've got family that works in the coal mines, and I always thought one of these days it might be my brother that I might have to go after, or uncle mine. My brother's on the mine rescue team too, so I know if something would happen to me, he'd be willing to come and try to get me.
Here by on the track heading, if you see anything bad top or anything like that, make sure you mark it on your map.
If anybody feels sick, nausea, let us know and we'll come back. Okay?
We practice once a month on a training session for the mine rescue. We train in rock dust and smoke to get used to working in dust and foggy and cloudy areas. So if we actually go to an actual fire, we'll be used to the dust and smoke and cloudiness.
All of you come here and gather around right here. I want to show you something. Now the groundhog that was in this hole is probably still in here asleep. Now they hibernate for the winter. The female will have their babies while they're hibernating. When they wake up in the spring, they've already had their young. What she'll do is she'll come out and she'll take tufts of grass, you know, and she'll carry it in her mouth. She'll take it into the hole, and she'll get down in the hole and she'll build herself a nest. When she gets this cavity, she'll take this grass, and there'll be, you know, a lot of it, great amounts of it. And it'll just be like a big nest there of this grass. And that helps to keep her warm. And like I say, she digs her tunnel in, and it's something like coal mining. She goes in under the ground and veers off in different directions. Like the coal mine. The coal mine goes in one main heading, they call it. Then they'll veer off one side, off another. and go in different directions to get the coal in all the areas. She does the same thing. She goes off in one direction and maybe makes a small cavity where she can get
Welcome, everybody. Hi, this is Skip Elsheimer of AV Geeks. Thanks for joining us for lunch. I'd like to welcome a special guest. This is Lars Nilsen, coming to us from Austin, Texas. Say hi, Lars.
Hi. Hi, Skip. Hi, everybody who's watching this. 55 people, I think, so thank you for joining us.
So I invited Lars because he and I go way back, and he actually remembers going even further back than I do. I remember meeting Lars in Austin at the Alamo Draft House. Do you remember what show we met at?
I don't remember what show. I mean, it was certainly at the original Colorado Street Draft House when you came and did a show, those shows were great.
Yes.
But a film strip, and everybody would have to read the film strip. So people would show up and they would have to relive some of that public speaking anxiety that they had felt, because you would show up, and I don't know if people now know what a film strip is, but it was a thing
I've shown a couple here online. I haven't figured out how to get them to online read the film strip. I've been kind of workshopping that, but anyways.
That's interesting. But in school, they would show a film strip, and it would just be literally just a reel of 35 millimeter film, positive film, that they would show a frame of, and then there'd be words on the bottom, and then different people in the class, as they went across, would have to read it out loud. And you have brought that fear and anxiety to modern audiences in movie theaters, where they're not expecting to have to do that. And it's a really fascinating thing, particularly because the ones that you would choose would often have, I don't know, sort of double meanings that would be very apparent to people. It's one of the most fun parts. And then you'd show, 4 or 5 16 millimeter educational films, and give it these erudite introductions. So it was great. But the first one of those that I remember seeing was, I was in Durham. I lived in Chapel Hill in 92, maybe 93, and saw that you were doing one in Durham at a church, as I recall. It seems like it was in a church, and went and saw that. And that may have been one of your first shows that you did. I didn't meet you then, but I enjoyed the show, and it made an impression. So
nice.
I've been watching your shows now for 28 years, I think.
Wow. And so what are you doing now?
Currently, I'm sitting on my couch. I work for Austin Film Society as head programmer, and we have a cinema. And right now, the cinema is closed, despite the fact that the governor said we can reopen. And we're doing virtual cinema. And then also, I've been doing a lot of sort of blogging and social media and stuff that I often don't have time to do when I'm actually programming a cinema.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I reached out to you is because you write a lot about the films that you program and that you have programmed, and you're a big champion, not only of AV Geeks, but also the other things that you program in Texas, in Austin. So, and what I decided to do is let you pick 3 films that you remember from when either I came to Austin and showed films, or you were also a big customer. You bought a bunch of DVDs for me that you kind of cut into pre-shows at the Alamo. So I wanted you to kind of chime in with which films you remembered.
Sure. Yeah. So some of these are ones that I remembered, and some of them just I don't even remember exactly necessarily the ones that you showed at your shows all the time. I don't know which of these I even saw at your shows, except for the first one that we're going to show, which is an obvious one because this was a big deal. Alamo Draft House AV Geeks collaboration, which was the ultimate school bus experience, I believe it was called. And this was a bus safety film shown on a bus, on an actual school bus.
A moving school bus.
A moving school bus. And I remember Tim League, my boss at the time, bought a school bus, and actually had that school bus for, last time I was behind the Draft House South Lamar, a bus was parked there, which I assumed was the same bus. I don't know. It might not be. I don't know. But Tim bought a bus. The bus became almost sort of like a joke for everybody, as it was parked behind South Lamar for a long time. Employees would have parties, would throw up on the bus. The whole thing. At one point, because there was a bus, Tim wanted to have another bus experience where we drove up to a drive-in in the bus. And I was running that. I was captaining that. And got so ahead of myself in terms of my fun-seeking responsibilities that I put graffiti on the side of the bus that actually said, it's a long story, but it said karate. I painted the words Karate Pete on the side of the bus. And then when I got back, I was like, oh, Tim is going to love it. And then I was at the office all day, and Tim hadn't mentioned it, and he hadn't mentioned it, and he hadn't mentioned it. And finally, I was like, did you see the bus? And he said, yeah. I thought that was very poor judgment on your part.
That's
So
funny.
that
Well, I would say that the whole adventure was a little bit of poor judgment. These
were years of poor judgment.
Yes.
Let's just put that aside.
I mean,
And
it was an amazing experience. And one thing I remember is when we did a tech check, because we actually had in the back of the bus was a 16 millimeter projector that was strapped down to like a stand. Then in the front of the bus, there was this makeshift screen that would go up, like kind of where you would come in on the bus, and so it would be directly behind the bus driver. And so we did that first tech check in the parking lot of South Lamar, and I was in the back running the projector, and there was all these speed bumps in South Lamar parking lot, and we hit a speed bump, and immediately I bounced up and hit my head. I thought I had gotten a concussion. So for the first time that we did that show, I wore a motorcycle helmet because I was afraid I was going to get knocked out riding around in the bus, because the back of the bus is, the suspension is not the best. So let's watch this film. This is called Bus Nut. And for those of you that tuned in last Friday, I showed Ghost Rider. Ghost Rider was made by the same people that made Bus Nut, but this is a different audience and a different message. So let's watch Bus Nut.
15 past the hour. We'll have news coming up on the half-hour weather in just a few minutes. You're on the morning show with Jay Graham. Here's some more music to help start off your day.
Much more coffee?
No, thank you. Hi, everybody. Hi.
Good morning, Bus Nut. Time to go.
Have a nice day.
You too. Goodbye, everybody. See you tonight, baby.
Next year, I'll be old enough to go to school, and I'll get to ride the school bus. You mean Bobby's bus? Sure.
Now drink your milk, Bobby. You wouldn't want to miss your bus.
I never miss the bus. It's the best part of the day. I love to sit up front so I can watch Mrs. Harris drive.
Look for a mostly sunny day today. Temperatures hanging around the mid-40s. Nice day to be outside.
Someday I want to be a bus driver just like Mrs. Harris.
Be careful walking to the bus stop, Bobby.
I will. The bus will be right on time this morning. Mrs. Harris drives extra careful on the days when there's bad weather, but today is really nice. She also has to watch out for all the kids. Sometimes you do silly things which can be dangerous. But I know being a bus driver is fun, too. You get to sit up front of the bus and you're bigger than all the cars. I can't wait till I'm old enough to be a bus driver, or maybe even drive a truck. Hi, Bobby. Hi. 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 Hey, here comes Crazy Billy. He's always running. He's always the last one here. Hey, look at Billy. He just ran right into the road without even looking. If the car had been coming, he might have got hit. Hi, Billy. Hi, everybody. Hi, Steve. Boy, Billy, that sure was dumb. Give me it. God, Amy, there's a car coming. Now who's being dumb, Amy? Yeah.
Good morning, Bobby. I sure wish all the kids were as careful as you are when they get on the bus. Hey, take it easy. Walk up those steps. Good morning, Billy.
Good morning, Mrs. Harris.
Hi, Amy.
Hello, Mrs. Harris.
Hello, Becca.
Good morning, Mrs. Harris. Hi, Mrs. Harris.
Hi, all you kids.
Mrs. Harris is right. I still have the bruise I got when Billy pushed me from behind. Amy should remember, too. She got hurt once and it bled.
Slow down. Slow down. What is the hurry?
Yeah, everyone avoid the job. Hey, where's Joey? There he is. Hey, look out, Joey. There's a car coming.
Joey Adams, you could have been killed. Never, ever run in front of the bus without checking the road first. The cars are supposed to stop, but sometimes they don't.
Here. Hey, Mrs. Harris has a hard job. She has to drive this big bus, and she has to look out for us, too. I sure hope I can be a good driver like Mrs. Harris someday.
Okay. So Lars, tell me about Bus Nut.
I love the film. I love the fact that this conceit about this kid who loves buses ended up making the cut, kind of. That obviously it went through pitch meetings where people were like, "Yeah, let's do that," you know. And I think it's such a sweet movie. Everything about this, I mean, I love the family. I love the kid. And I love the fact that they made it a black family, which is great. Because that must have been a choice somewhere along the lines. And I don't think it was specifically designed to address the sort of freighted relationship between black people and buses at the time, going back to Rosa Parks and then the sort of busing policies that were going on. But I think it's a choice, you know. It may have just been the best family that they found to do it, but I think it gives it so much more sort of sociological interest and also kind of heft, because like, here's a weird kid who's black. So here's an identity. Here's people who are allowed to have an identity other than just being black, which is a thing that you didn't see so much. It was like if you did see a black person in media at the time, it was kind of like, oh, that's their thing. They're black, you know. But in this case, it's like, oh, that's this kid's thing, you know, being obsessed with buses. So all of that kind of stuff, I think, is so interesting. And I love the fact that it's that this is a film that was commissioned, obviously, by, you know, the state for bus safety. But then there are all these sort of creative people who use this as a chance to make something special. And that's a big part of what I like about so many of the films that you present out of your archive, is that some creative people like looked at this and said, well, let's do something cool and fun with it, and something that sort of you know, has a little bit of something to do with our values.
Right.
So that's what I really like about Bus Nut. A couple of the other films that we'll show later won't be the other two films that we're going to show today aren't as fun as Bus Nut, but I think there's a lot of sociological interest.
I think they're fun, but yeah.
I would love to. I would be proud if I had been a part of making Bus Nut.
Yeah. So there's another film that's part of that same series. It's called Rescue Man, and it features a little African-American boy who kind of imagines that he is a superhero, and he helps kids exit the bus through the emergency exit in the back.
So great.
Yeah. So these were wonderful films that, you know, kind of, I think, intentionally had African-American actors because they were trying to address different audiences. And there's a whole interesting spectrum of all these films that were made. So Ghost Rider was also about using the emergency exit, but it was aimed at an older, at middle school, high school. There's a film called Old 23, which is about vandalism, about like not messing up your bus. There's one called One Lousy Second, which is actually for bus drivers, and is about you know, the importance of keeping your eyes on the road. So it's a really fascinating kind of group of films that kind of came out around that time, and all very thoughtful. So let's talk about this next film that you wanted to see, Keep Off the Grass.
Keep Off the Grass is, well, it's a Sid Davis film. It's a scare film. This guy, Sid Davis, had been producing films by the time he made this, he must have been making films for 30 plus years. And his films are really notable for providing a lot of anxiety, like using anxiety as really sort of a prod of social responsibility as seen by the people who commissioned Sid Davis's movies. They're very conservative films. They're films that are sort of designed to rope people in, to kind of rope the herd in and keep them all going in the same direction. What I think is really interesting about Keep Off the Grass, which is a film that I watched in a classroom in Rocky Mount, North Carolina, and I'm not sure if this might be the same print that you got. I don't know if you remember where you got your print.
Yeah, I mean, I got mine from the state Department of Human Resources, so it's possible that they could have gotten it. It's totally possible.
Yeah, who knows? I don't know. It's a film that will fill you with anxiety. What I find is interesting about it, and also it's too long. This is the thing. It's like, let's address the elephant in the room with some of these films. It's like there's 5 minutes of real fun and interest in this movie, but it's not a 5-minute movie. So that's just a thing. We should address that sometimes. And when I would cut some of these movies into pre-show stuff, oh boy, would I chop them up, you know. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Just to note that. But I did watch this in probably 1984, I don't know, in that school classroom. And then it was only a few years later that you started doing what you were doing. And you were kind of, you had sort of seized upon the obsolescence of all of this to just drive around and grab a ton of 16-millimeter films that school districts were just tossing out because I guess they needed room or something. They had to get rid of all their old 60-millimeter projectors and 16-millimeter stuff. And of course, VCRs had come around and kids were watching, you know, videotapes in schools. And you were picking that stuff up at that time. So I'm really interested. It's really fascinating to me and an honor, really, to know that I was one of the last generation to have watched a 16-millimeter Sid Davis scare film in a classroom.
Nice.
But the film, another really interesting thing about this film is that it's not, when you watch it, you might think, oh, it's going to be like how you smoke marijuana and then you drive off a cliff, or it's going to be about how you smoke marijuana and then you set yourself on fire. But it's not about any of that kind of stuff. It had subtly, it's from 1970, and it had very subtly sort of, subtle is not a word we often use with Sid Davis, but it was reflecting the new messaging and the new approach of the establishment towards marijuana, which is that it makes you amotivational, which is that it takes away your drive to succeed in life, which is that it'll make you this total outcast and you'll be a total disappointment to your family and your community. And the film even like references like a Life magazine article, which is sort of like a social keynote about where the messaging was going. Right. So you might, if you had tuned in to Keep Off the Grass expecting, oh, this will be this hilarious scare film, it's not exactly that.
No.
God knows it's ham-handed.
Yes.
It's not realistic at all. It's very much in the sort of Sid Davis, and this is a guy who had been, whose films were scare films and who had made some of the terrifying Driver's Ed and Don't Talk to Strangers scare films. But it's also, what it's trying to scare you about is that you're going to be useless to society. But this little thing that you're going through is going to cripple you in terms of your suitability for marriage, for being a part of your family unit. And so it's pretty frightening along a line that maybe we hadn't seen fright deployed before.
Right. So let's watch Keep Off the Grass, and then I will share with you an email conversation that I had with Tom, the main character. He found me, and we had a back and forth talking about his involvement with the film and what he was currently working on at the time. This is back in 2006. So let's watch Keep Off the Grass. And I should caution, this print is super splicey at the beginning, but it gets good real quick. So enjoy.
These are yours?
Yeah, they're mine. Oh, Tom, how could you?
Like all too many of his contemporaries, Tom is experimenting with something he knows little about which too little is known by anyone. Marijuana. It's a scene which must have times, in countless ways, all equally heartbreaking. The father-son confrontation.
Mom smokes like a chimney. And you have a drink every day and smoke too.
It's not the same.
Why not? It's easy for you to stand there with a cigarette in one hand and a drink in another and tell us not to blow pot.
Have you really considered all the consequences?
There's not a shred of evidence that marijuana is any worse than nicotine or alcohol. You can get cancer. Your liver can rot away.
Well, you're right. You rather look down on my generation for getting hung up on smoking and drinking, knowing it's bad for us. You think we're stupid. Maybe you're right. But does that make your generation so all-fired smart for getting hung up on grass? You can be harmed by that, too. Or do you have double standards when it comes to our smoking and drinking and your blowing pot?
Pot isn't bad for you.
Oh, isn't it? How do you know?
Studies concerning marijuana's possibly harmful effects have been made, although they're not yet conclusive. But some facts are known. Some effects have been established. There are apparently few physical manifestations, a reddening of the eyes, lowered body temperature, and a certain inability to coordinate movement. But there are other effects, psychological effects. The marijuana user generally experiences an uncontrollable feeling of hilarity, quite without reason. He exhibits a marked carelessness. His senses and time perception are distorted. He becomes confused, and he displays irresponsibility and poor judgment. And prolonged use may result in a loss of ambitious respect, the induced couldn't care less attitude.
But grass is not a dangerous drug like heroin. You don't become an addict.
May not be physically addictive, but it is habituating. You can come to
What it really does is expand your mind. Makes you see things more clearly. Makes you more creative. Really, it does. All the painters and writers, they all say so. Yeah, maybe they do.
Anyway, Tom, it is illegal. Every time you blow a marijuana cigarette, you take a chance on blowing your future.
Oh, come on, Pop. All my friends smoke pot. They're not criminals.
Only because they haven't been caught yet.
Two viewpoints, two opinions. But the relationship between Tom and his father is basically a good one. Tom's father believes in his son, and he challenges him, find out the actual facts about smoking grass, the pros and cons, fair and square. Don't hear only what you want to hear. And then if Tom is still honestly convinced there's no harm in doing it, nothing further will be said. Tom agrees. He's only smoked pot occasionally for a few weeks. He's really new to the scene.
Well, here, you can start with this.
Oh, Pop, come on. Establishment propaganda.
Read it anyway.
Yeah, sure, later. But I've got a better source of information.
Tom seeks the help of his friend, Mac, a couple of years his senior, the boy who first introduced him to pot. Mac thinks Tom's project is real square, but he agrees to get him all the dope. No pun intended. He knows just where to start Tom's education. At a garden pot party held by one of Mac's friends. Smoking grass is a private affair and doesn't harm anybody, he's told. It's a groovy way of relaxing, opening your senses. Tom is most interested in what he sees. These people, most of them college students, are bright and well-adjusted, very sure of themselves and their ability to handle anything. Obviously, they are all able to blow pot occasionally without ill effects. Well, almost all of them. Pot doesn't have the toxic effects of cigarettes, he's told, and it doesn't lead to the excesses of behavior that alcohol does.
Ability to coordinate movement.
The negative effects of smoking grass are exaggerated. All it is a neat way to dispel the problems of the day for a little while.
Uncontrollable hilarity without reason.
Mac has managed to get himself stoned. He has a great idea. He'll take Tom to see someone who can give him the real lowdown, a true expert on the grass scene.
Irresponsibility and poor judgment.
Where's your head?
Quit buggy. Nothing happened.
Mac takes Tom to a psychedelic shop, a head shop, The place is something else, out of sight. A pot smoker's supermarket, a psychedelicatessen. It's run by a man named Harry. Harry is a real veteran of the grass scene, and he gives Tom the word. He's very persuasive. Everyone, but everyone's on grass. All the big ones, of course. The best writers, the best musicians, the best... It's definitely the scene. Tom is impressed with the imaginative, creative posters displayed on the wall. And he asks Harry about the artist. But it's Mac again who has the answer. He knows the artist. Man, he painted those posters a couple of years ago. His pad's nearby. Why not go over and meet him? Why not, indeed?
Hey, man, got any spare change?
Sure. Here.
Loss of self-respect.
Waco, the artist, is pleased and flattered at the visit and lights up a joint in honor of his visitors. Sure, he blows pot. Has been for years. It's great, man. Enhances the senses, opens your mind, stimulates real creativity. Those conventional posters of the old days were just so much junk, Waco tells them. His real inspirations come to him now when he's stoned on grass. This new work, now that's out of sight.
They only think they create better things.
Waco insists grass is the greatest. That's where real expansion of your mind and talents can be found. Turn on, tune out of the rat race and its square problems, and tune in on real self-knowledge and creative power.
Waco, come quick!
Bunny is Waco's wife. There's trouble, big trouble. The man is busting her younger brother. It's grass, all right. Bunny's brother, Jim, had been observed getting it from a known dealer. The officers caught up with him and placed him under arrest.
It's still illegal. You take a chance of blowing your whole future.
Bunny wants to know what the officers are going to do with her brother. The officer explains that Jim and the evidence found will be taken to the police station. She can get all further information there. Tom is impressed with the calm efficiency of the officers and the compassion they show for Bunny. They never lose their cool, even in the face of verbal abuse hurled at them by some of the onlookers. Bunny and Waco want to go to the police station, and Mac and Tom decide to tag along. At the police station, while Waco's talking to the desk sergeant, Bunny's worrying about her brother. He knew he was taking a chance on that pickup, she says, but he just had to have his grass.
Not physically addictive, but habituating. You get to depend on it psychologically.
Tom wants to think, so many thoughts are crowding his mind. Marijuana, cannabis sativa, or Indian hemp, weed, grass, pot. It can become a stimulant or a depressive or an hallucinatory agent, which affects the central nervous system and reacts differently and unpredictably on each individual user. occasionally with disastrous results. Tom has company. A police officer has noticed his interest in the display. Does he have any questions? Well, Tom is out after information, pro and con. What are the facts, he asks. Easily, with friendly informality, the officer speaks to Tom. No lecturing, no sermonizing. Pot smoking, quite apart from being illegal, is a problem. The psychological dependency generated by pot is probably its greatest danger. Plus the fact that so many young smokers who can't cope with the everyday problems of growing up seek an ersatz maturity through it. Kids who get high repeatedly don't want to come down. There's a wholesome abandonment of goals and ambitions. They've found a world where they seemingly have no problems. That's the cruelest hoax of all. Smoking marijuana all too often leads to the use of more dangerous stuff. Take it from one who runs into the young victims of just that every day. Users tend to stick with other users and addicts who can easily get them on harder stuff. Every user is a potential dealer. Some 95% of all heroin addicts started with pot. Not every pot smoker goes on to heroin, of course. A personality factor is undoubtedly largely responsible for that step. Very likely the same personality factor which turned the user on to pot. Yes, organized crime is involved in pushing marijuana. After all, it may well be a first step to real addiction, where the big money is. And every pot smoker indirectly supports big-time narcotics dealers and criminals. These dealers sometimes even get cute. They've been known to mix other drugs in the grass, hoping for a quick and dependable push towards addiction. Not to mention all the other junk and impurities mixed in with the average cut of marijuana. Maybe smoking pot isn't physically harmful to the young occasional user, although this is far from certain. As recently as 1914, heroin was sold over the counter as harmless because its deadly properties were not fully known. But consider this. Both alcohol used in excess and marijuana are equally capable of producing erratic behavior and dependency. Maybe there is a similarity between the social drinker and the pot smoker, yet it's not quite the same. The daily drink may not be the best thing in the world, but a man who takes a drink after his day is done has worked. He has achieved, he has coped, and he wants to relax. Not so the teenage user. He deliberately seeks to tune out, cop out. He uses his grass as a mental crutch because he fears to stand on his own. He may never learn to cope with the inevitable everyday problems of living. He may well become one of the left-behind generation. Does smoking grass lead to crime? It can, quite easily, as can any driving need when the one possessed by it is without the means to satisfy it. And legalizing the use of marijuana is not the answer. Of the over 130 member nations of the World Health Organization, not one is for such a step. One nation did try it, with such dire results to its societal welfare within a few years, that the permissive stand was diametrically reversed, and today the death penalty is imposed for mere possession. In the United States, a less harsh, more realistic legal attitude than exists might be the answer. But in the end, smoking marijuana to blow your mind is like throwing sand in a delicate machine and hoping nothing goes wrong. Mac has had enough of the gloomy scene. He's itching to split. It's getting late. Tom still got to see where it's at.
It may be a first step. The left behind generation. It can lead to crime. You look like you've got bread, man. Give.
There's nothing wrong with smoking marijuana. It's no worse than taking a drink.
A 20-year study of marijuana smokers in Greece showed a frightening personality change and permanent brain deterioration.
There are still too many unanswered questions about the effects of smoking marijuana. Exhaustive tests are being made. Let's wait and see.
Man, you look uptight. You need a little grass. No. On the house.
No thanks.
He's just a kid. He's old enough to have a buck. He's old enough to blow pot. It's easy money, man.
Tom's impressed with what he has experienced. Nobody of the establishment lectured him, just gave him straight facts. Only the pot smokers seemed obsessed with the idea of turning others on. One afternoon, Tom again has a talk with his father. He's looked at both the pros and cons of blowing pot. He's not convinced that grass is all that harmful, but there is room for a lot of doubt. Why don't we wait and see? There's a lot of testing to be done before we'll know all the facts. We've already got our hang-ups with smoking and drinking. We know the consequences we face doing it. Why add another hang-up by blowing pot? Especially since the full consequences of that are not known. Tom has decided what he'll do. It would be stupid to take a chance. After all, he's no psychological cripple, unable to cope. Who needs a grass crutch? Much better to keep off the grass.
And we are back. We had a lot to talk about during this film. But let me share the email that I got some time ago. Back in 2006, I got actually a threatening email from Joe Richards, the guy who played Tom. He said, I guess you sold the clip to A&E, and I just think that this is not right, that you're using my likeness without consent. He said, but if you send me a DVD then of the film, then we'll be okay. And I said, hey, no problem. I'll send you a DVD. And I did. It wasn't me that actually sold that clip, so I didn't do that. But anyways, so I asked him about, like, so what was your experiences with the film? Like, tell me about Sid Davis. Like, and he said, Skip, I love Sid Davis. He cast me for this film at Santa Monica College. I was in the theater arts department. I was on the GI Bill. He took me out on trips so we would hang out and talk. He found out I had never been to Palm Springs, so he took me there. And not only that, but I also got to ride on the tram for the first time. I'm not sure what that is. He knew I came from a tough background. He became like a father figure to me. I was raised in a boys' home in Brooklyn, and he asked me what I needed: a job, money, etc. I guess the drug culture got me. Now, and this was back in 2006, he is a Jack Nicholson impersonator, as well as a writer and an anti-war poet. And he gave me some URLs, but none of them exist anymore, which is unfortunate. Then I asked him, I said, do you remember any anecdotes about it? And do you feel the film was effective in warning folks about the dangers of marijuana? He said, we all thought this film was a joke, to put it nicely. I'm sorry to say a lot of them went off the deep end. To begin with, I wouldn't trade my life with no one. And even the big guy, Jack, saying that, him being Jack Nicholson, I went back to Hawaii and got busted for pot. And I'm still smoking this stuff. It's like a dream watching this film. Some went on to harder drugs. It stopped my film career, but I'm a singer and dancer too. I have a CD out of Hawaiian tunes. So, yeah. Then he asked me if I ever smoked pot, and I said no, not really.
Hey, I'll send you some.
Okay, yeah, exactly. But anyways, so this is a story that I've heard many times, is that people that appear in these films they think it's a joke. Like,
right.
They're the ones that, Tom is learned a hard lesson about the dangers of marijuana, and yet he hasn't learned a hard lesson in real life. He hasn't made a compelling enough argument for himself. And most people that have talked to me about the drug films that they were in have that same story.
And so Sid Davis, the producer of this film, was trolling theater departments in like local community colleges for talent, which I think that's a really interesting sort of insight into the way it works. But then also clearly, if you're at Santa Monica Community College in 1970 and you have sort of longish hair and you're sort of mod, then what are the chances that you're not a marijuana smoker?
No, exactly. Yeah. I mean, I guess I didn't ask the question like, well, did Sid Davis know that you smoke pot? I think that Sid was very thrifty in his film productions. Like, that's why most of this is actually voiceover narration and not sync sound.
Right.
And he would reuse scenes. He would reuse scripts. So I'm not surprised that he reached out to students to do the acting. And you can kind of tell that in a lot of films, the acting is not very good.
Yeah.
But that's part of his charm, I think, is that I don't know if you know his backstory. So Sid Davis was actually a stand-in for John Wayne. And around that time is when there was this publicized case where this girl was murdered by a neighbor. And so he talked to his daughter to see, how would she deal with a stranger? And he was surprised to find out that she did not have the stranger danger instilled in her. And so he made Dangerous Stranger as a way to kind of alert kids to the fact that there are bad people out there. And it was actually financed by John Wayne, who he borrowed money from. And I think he
$1,000.
Yeah. And so he basically made that movie over and over and over again. Made new versions of it, but then also made different versions of it with different titles, but all talking about stranger danger. And so when you talked about the anxiety and the fears, I mean, he's pulling from urban legends. He's pulling from kind of this theory. And actually, it was kind of funny. Well, not funny, but when he passed away, the New York Times did this obituary, and they compared him to that book, that German book. I think it's Tales of Shockhead Peter, which is basically all these cautionary tales for children about what happens if they, don't wash their hands or don't behave or don't cut their nails or, all these amazing things that happen that were designed to get kids to freak out and to behave.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the one thing that runs through all this work. And even that, while you may see differences in the rationale for why you should stick with the establishment line, it's basically, that's the one theme that runs through all of these is like, do what you're told, behave, it's for your own good. And what I think is so fascinating about this movie is that it has found this sort of much more sort of abstract way to sort of put that across, in the fact that this our young protagonist is reading widely and exploring and thinking about this stuff. That's not a thing that you would have seen in a movie from 1960, for instance.
Right.
He would not have been a searcher. The fact that it's the same sort of methodology of the previous films that he'd been making for all those decades earlier, applied to a searching generation. And basically saying, you can stop searching, okay, you can stop with your little hypocrisy narrative about dad smoking and drinking, because we've done the work for you. Yeah. Here it is.
All right, so we've got one last film here, and it is a Lulu. I have shown over these last couple of weeks, and this is the end of week 7. We've been doing this for a while. I've been showing some internal salesman films. I showed one called Rugs to Riches that featured Jonathan Winters, kind of being goofy. And there's some other ones that I've shown over the last couple of weeks. This one you picked, and I was kind of saving it. And so tell me why you picked Friesen.
Well, there were a couple of others that I wanted to choose that other people had chosen already. Friesen, for me, is really fascinating because of the sort of cultural and subcultural implications of it. So, first of all, it's a takeoff of a show called Laugh-In that maybe people here have seen or maybe they haven't seen. It was a comedy variety show, and the name Laugh-In was a takeoff of like the Love-In or the Be-In, that was sort of like a 60s trope. But Laugh-In was a show that was just blackout comedy sketches, sort of punctuated by some of the regulars that were on the show, by Gary Owens, the announcer, doing funny, deep voice guy announcer bits, and Artie Johnson and Judy Carn and Goldie Hawn, just doing little blackout comedy bits. Sometimes they were kind of non sequiturs, big, loud, like laugh track throughout. And it was very popular for a few years.
Yes. I mean, it was number one. It was number one in television ratings.
Huge. But what it was this very sort of mainstream way to kind of co-opt in a way the sort of hippie, anarchy, sort of fun thing that kids were doing at the time. And so what this movie is called Friesen is it's for Sears. It's for Sears, right? Is that what it's for? I think it is. Yeah. It's been a while since I watched it all the way through. For Sears salesmen selling like refrigeration equipment.
Specifically Kenmore freezers.
Right. Kenmore freezers, which is the store brand from Sears. And it was designed to be shown at like obviously like a sales rally, sales convention, or for like the regional sales rep to show it to his guys. So they would all get sort of pumped up, get rallied, get their talking points. And at the same time, there's kind of like a boys club sort of atmosphere to these that you might have had at like a convention. So there's a very sort of almost like, I don't want to say like Mad Men because that was a way different level, but like the minor league Mad Men kind of world of these guys would get together at these conventions. They would drink scotch. They would maybe go for a massage by the highway. I don't know what they would do, but it would be like far down below like the antics of Mad Men, but the same kind of guys, the same kind of guys, but in like Wilkes-Barre, PA, So you see all of that, and it's the culture and the way that it's sort of reinforced is not only a culture of like sales, not only a culture of, like, let's say, capitalism and selling and commodification and credit payment, like that whole world of like post-war capitalism, but it's specifically the subculture of the people that are on the ground selling that myth, selling that lifestyle, who are the salespeople. And so I think it's kind of cultish in a way, that there's almost like it's almost kind of like a maintenance of the cult, of the boundaries of the cult, of the lingo of the cult, of the values of the cult. And it's all put forward in this sort of dizzying echo chamber way, like mainstream culture, which in fact was kind of co-opting the subculture or the anti-culture or the counter-culture. So all of that to me just makes it fascinating. Here's the other part about it. It's so annoying. It's really, like, Laugh-In for me is annoying. I think that you're a bigger fan of Laugh-In than I am.
I am.
And I haven't watched a lot of Laugh-In. But imagine Laugh-In only, instead of having like this, you know, a cast of 17 people, you've got just the 2 people from Laugh-In and then a different announcer. And then that's the way that they're trying to put these gags over. It doesn't work as well as Laugh-In, nor would you expect it to.
Well, and it's interesting. So I think, so it's made by Calvin Communications, which actually made funny internal corporate spoofs. So they know what's funny. And this is featuring Artie Johnson and Judy Carn, who were, you know, key people on Laugh-In. Like, while Laugh-In was still on television, they got hired. So there was a bunch of money spent on this. And this is supposed to be funny. But it is not.
It's not funny. No, it's not funny. I mean, it's sort of it kind of laps itself in a way and sort of becomes funny at how unfunny it is.
Yes, that's why I like this film, because it is such a humor train wreck. Let's go ahead and watch it, and then we can talk a little bit more.
Don't expect it to be funny on the terms that it intends to be funny.
No.
Expect it to be funny kind of in a way, and that, like, this is the way that these people wanted to reach, you know, salesmen in Albemarle, North Carolina, Sears Roebuck, you know, or the Rocky Mountain, North Carolina, Sears Roebuck. Like, this is what they thought that these guys were just going to be rolling on the floor about.
Right. All right, here we go. I'm just going to go ahead and say, I'm sorry and you're welcome. Here is Friesen.
Very interesting. But in comes the sequential.
And now, the Sears Roebuck & Company Friesen takes a look at freezer selling, past, present and future. Here's a look at how freezers were sold 30 years ago.
Good morning, ma'am. I see you're interested in a freezer. Oh, you undoubtedly saw our ad on this little jewel. We call it our jewel box. It's the most freezer you can get for the money. Right here, look, you can put a whole side of beef. Right here, everything. And over here, there's room for all kinds of things. I bet you're a nut on fresh strawberries, aren't you? All you have to do is buy them. By the bushel, even. I bet you could put a whole bushel of fresh strawberries right here. And look at these other features. Look at them. Hello!
was Friesen's look at the past. Here's Friesen's look at the present. That's things as they are now.
Good morning, madam. I see you're interested in a freezer. You undoubtedly have seen our ad for this little jewel here. In fact, we call it our jewel box. This is the biggest freezer you can get for this price. Look here. You can get a whole side of beef right here. Everything. Over here, there's room for all kinds of things. I'll bet you're a nut over fresh strawberries, aren't you? All you have to do is buy them. By the bushel, even. I could just see a whole bushel of fresh strawberries right there. And look at these other wonderful conveniences.
And now, Friesen takes a look at the future. That's 30 years from now.
Good morning, madam. I can see you're interested in a freezer. You undoubtedly saw our ad on this jewel. In fact, we call it our jewel box. This is the biggest freezer you can get at this price. And right here, you can get a whole side of beef. Right here, everything. And over here, you can put all sorts of things. I'll bet you're kind of a nut over fresh strawberries, aren't you? All you have to do is buy them. By the bushel, even. I bet you could put a whole bushel of strawberries right here. And look at all these other features.
And now, folks, it's Suck It To Me time.
The point to this, ladies and gentlemen, is that freezers haven't been selling very well. 20 years ago, we were pushing the cold, dark holes to farm families as a cheap place to put stuff. We're still doing it today. But if we keep doing it tomorrow, we're going to miss a lot of customers. After all, that economy model freezer is...
What he's trying to say is that this bottom-of-the-line freezer is not what we should be selling the hardest at all. It's just a cold, dark hole. Inconvenient and nothing but a coffin. Ugh.
Very interesting, but morbid. Yeah.
Yes, the lady is right. It's time for Sears to quit pushing those cold, dark coffins onto everybody who comes into the store. Customers have changed. We need to talk to the millions of young married couples who have more money to spend than ever before. What these housewives want is convenience, not cubic feet per dollars. And only Sears can give them true convenience in a freezer. That's right. Today's freezer customers are young, better educated housewives. Intelligent. Gracious. More sophisticated. And these housewives are mainly interested in convenience. That is what we have to sell them.
And now, folks, it's Suck It To Me time.
Good afternoon.
Oh, hello. Guess what?
What?
My husband shot an elk.
Well, I see.
That's why I need a freezer, you see.
Uh-huh.
You ever tried to put an elk in a refrigerator?
No, but once I tried it with an odd fellow.
I think this one's big enough. I see it's on sale, too.
Well, Mrs.
Parkenfinkel. Mrs. Falkland T. Parkenfinkel.
Well, Mrs. Finkelputler.
Parkenfinkel.
Oh, I see, yes. Well, this is big enough to hold an elk, all right. But may I suggest you see the Cold Spot Time Bank? It's really much more than just a freezer.
Oh. Oh, look at all those lovely pizzas.
That's the idea of the Time Bank. When you make one pizza, or anything else, just make an extra 2 or 3 at the same time and put them in the freezer. It just takes a few minutes more to make extra servings of a meal. So when you store them in the freezer, you're actually storing up time, see?
Oh, isn't that nice?
Yeah, but this is a withdrawal slip.
Yes, I know. I'd like to withdraw 2 hours and 45 minutes from the time bank.
Very interesting. We tried it in Camelot, and it worked. Camelot.
Cold Spot Time Banks have 4 things that make them more convenient than any other freezer you can buy today. Findability, accessibility, flexibility, and visibility. Yes, Cold Spot Time Banks have findability. That means you can always find what you're looking for easily.
Oh, boysenberry pie. My time bank gives me complete findability. I always know where things are. It's like a filing system. Let's see. Casseroles, and then, oh, well, you see, my husband, and now, folks, it's fuck it to me time. Tell me, why is Sears Time Bank the most convenient freezer on the market?
Oh, that's very easy. For 4 big reasons. First, there's findability. Then, flexibility, because you can arrange the shelves to fit any food you have. Then, of course, accessibility, because you can reach in and take anything out. Then, visibility, because you can see everything very easily.
Oh, can I buy one with invisibility?
Invisibility.
Yes, I want to put one in my living room, and if it doesn't have visibility, then it must have invisibility, and I won't be able to see it.
With Time Bank flexibility, the housewife can design her own freezer to fit whatever she wants to keep handy. We've got... Thanks.
Thanks.
Ah, pizza, my favorite dish.
Oh, since I've had my time bank, I've been making up extra pizzas. In fact, I've made 273 of your favorite kind.
What is my favorite kind?
Oh, pomegranate, of course.
Oh, 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 oh.
Bye, love. I'm going to go to the bridge club. Anything you want is in the freezer.
Very interesting. Eating habits. But you don't put pigs in a piggy bank, do you?
He's going to be so proud of me when he finds out I've stored a year's supply of salami sandwiches in my new time bank.
If she serves me another salami sandwich today, I'll... maybe something else, too.
And so with the Cold Spot Time Bank, you can eat better, save money, and above all, save yourself lots of time.
I don't really need one.
But why? Why not? Remember the elk.
All right, I'll buy one. Where do I go to pay for it?
Just take your check to the cashier.
Oh. Oh. Very interesting, but a little heavy.
What you might say about all this is that you haven't really lived until you've frozen.
Or, one could say, one can't really freeze conveniently until you're frozen in a Cold Spot Time Bank.
You gotta keep moving in here to keep warm. Very interesting. But who's watching the store?
Here we go. Yeah, there you go. Freeze in. Again, I'm sorry and you're welcome. And this guy wanted to see it, so it's his fault.
Here's the thing that I often share with film programmers. It's like a lot of times you have an idea, but you don't really think through it in real time. Like, it's the reason people are always like, oh, you got to do this double feature. You got to do this marathon. I'm like, think through this in real time, okay? And so for me, like Friesen, I was like, oh, I'm really interested in in the sort of fascinating aspects of Friesen. But then it's like, it's 16 minutes that feels like 16 years,
Yeah.
you know?
Yes. And the key to this is it's supposed to be funny, And so when I compare it to Laugh-In, it's the editing. Like, they didn't edit it as tightly as Laugh-In. If they edited it as tightly as Laugh-In and didn't linger, then it could potentially be funnier. But no, I feel like this is my theory. I was talking to Lars about this during the film, is I think they paid a lot of money to Judy Carn and Artie Johnson because this was airing while they were still on the show. Sears must have paid
$50 million probably.
Yeah, sure. $50 million. And so they were probably like, you know what? We spent so much money on this. We're going to use every single frame, every single thing they shot, we're going to use. And I know that Calvin knows how to make a funny film. Like, they have done some amazing spoof industrial films. You can check them out on Internet Archive. One is called Your Name Here, which is just hilarious.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's a good one.
But this one is just, I call it like watching an excruciatingly slow train wreck. But you all endured it, which is great. I'm amazed that people are still watching and still commenting. The fact that you could comment out loud, I think, made a big difference. Anytime I've shown it in a theater, there's groaning. There's audible groaning. And at least one time I showed it at this conference that we did called the Bastard Film Encounter. And we showed it, and somebody stood up and said, I have seen this movie 3 times. And I never, ever, ever want to see this movie again.
Well, I've seen it 1 time, I think, and I never want to see it again. I didn't just watch it now. What do you think? I'm some kind of sucker that would watch that? No way.
Well, Lars, it was great having you as a guest. I enjoy your comments and wittiness. I put over here on the screen the Austin Film Society, and where do you publish at your blogs, and where do you talk about films? Where should we route people?
The AFS Viewfinders blog, which I call a film culture site, not a blog, but it seems like it's a blog, so whatever, is where I publish an article, 3-4 times a week. So there's usually some interesting stuff in there for people. And then when it gets shared on our social stuff. So AFS Viewfinders Facebook group is where all that goes, or Austin Film Society Instagram and all that. We're all over the place. Austin Film Society is easy to find.
Right. Great. And supposedly you were working on something. It's in the future, but it's about. You want to tell us a little bit about what that is?
I'm working on a book, which I don't know that I can share much about it.
Okay.
So I just don't know if it's been public yet.
Oh, okay. All right.
Working on it with another recent guest on your
yes
on your lunchtime show.
Yeah, it'll be compelling because it's. Yeah. Anyways, I'll stop being so mysterious. Anyways, when it comes out, you'll mention it on the Viewfinders thing, correct?
I'll mention it everywhere that I can mention things.
Excellent. Yes.
Yes.
I found that Lars has a good eye, a keen eye, and whatever he writes about and talks about is something that you should check out. And since we're all at
I've noticed
home,
that too.
Yeah.
I've also noticed that. Yeah.
Since we have the time, now is a great place to kind of go and do the research and find the things that you are recommending and use that as a base for maybe the next thing to watch when it's midnight and you're bored.
Yeah, that sounds good. Also, if you ever feel like giving money to Austin Film Society, it goes towards not only our exhibition program, but to artists, to Austin Studios, to just generally keeping this town a great place for film.
Yes. And I'm looking forward to when the theaters open back up and that we can go out and see movies again. And next time I'm in Austin, I would love to do a screening at Austin Film Society. Maybe I will show all the films that are related to Laugh-In that I have in my collection.
Except for Friesen.
Okay. All right. Excellent.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Lars. Everybody have a good weekend, and I will be back next Monday. and we'll watch some more films. I had some lined up just in case we ran short, but we didn't. And so have a good weekend, and we will see you soon. Take care.